who has inspired all of us here in Seattle with their incredible strikes in nearby Marysville and Olympia. Bailey Adelson is a barista at the Olympia Starbucks store that went on a courageous one-day strike to protest the union busing at their store. Please welcome Billy.
Hi, I'm Billy. This is Nora. This is Madison. I love you guys. We're from Cooper Point Village down in Olympia. I know that we are from the first store to go on strike on the West Coast. Was not without fear. We didn't know what we were doing at all. But we had a lot of help from Shama Sawant's people. They really, inspired us. They, empowered us to just, say how we feel and like talk about our issues, which, when we started organizing, we realized like a lot of our issues were synonymous with a lot of other stores just across the nation. And we realized that we couldn't really quit. Quitting wasn't an option because nothing was going to change if we quit. Also, we just run into a lot of the same problems. Sorry, I gotta look at my notes. Yeah, we realized what we were doing was so important because what's happening it wasn't just happening in Olympia. We realized it was also happening, at a lot of other jobs, just other retail jobs, other service jobs. Unfortunately, when you live in late stage capitalism, you're going to get exploited. You're going to be silenced. It's just the way it is. So I think that what we're doing here today is super important. It's a gorgeous day. Kind of the perfect day. What we're doing here, using our most impactful weapon, which is to go on strike. Sorry, I hate public speaking. Yeah, I think what we're gonna do here, it's not just gonna be, this butterfly effect that happens in Starbucks. I think it's gonna be a thing that happens, with the working class just in general. One thing that just made me laugh was throughout the pandemic, a lot of corporations like to call us essential workers. And they said, oh, yeah, pat yourself on the back. You're such an essential worker because you risked your health and safety to put food on the table. You had no choice. Ooh. And so now, look at us out here. You guys inspire me because we are out here and we said, you know what? We are essential workers and we're going to start acting like it. And you're going to pay us what we deserve. And they're mad about it. They're real mad. Howard Schultz is mad. He's shaking. We can see its greedy side. We can see you, Howard Schultz. Okay. Last thing I'm going to say is that I know that a lot of people are out here despite all of their fears of, the unknown and their fears of retaliation. And I'm real inspired by you guys because I know since we started organizing, I know for myself, I just feel real empowered to stand up for myself in my personal life, not afraid to speak my mind. And I think that this is a really important opportunity for us as just people in our communities to start being more collective with each other. I think as we slowly begin to reconnect with each other, as the pandemic slowly slows down, we have a real opportunity now to try to create something good together and step away from individualism. What does that look like? It looks like going to co-ops. It looks like supporting small businesses. It looks like getting involved in your community. It looks like unionizing, y'all. Last thing, I promise. I think it also really, really, really is important that as we start to prioritize our community, that we really need to support and protect unhoused people and also those most marginalized among us, because they have been silenced, and that's not okay.
Thank you so much, Billy and workers from Olympia. Next, I want to introduce Katie Mccoy. Katie Mccoy is a barista at the Marysville Starbucks that went on a 3-day strike before they had even started collecting their union cards. By day 3, they had signed 70% of their union cards from coworkers. Please welcome Katie.
Hello, my name's Katie. I'm an 18-year-old partner out of Marysville, the Lakewood Crossing store. My store went on strike about 2 weeks ago, protesting against the working conditions and unfair labor practices at our store. Before our strike, we really hadn't had a whole lot of conversations about unionizing the store. We went on strike with no union card signed, but by the end of our 3-day strike, we had shut down the store's operations and and we had gotten 70% of our union cards signed, petitioned the NLRB for a union election, and then yesterday, almost exactly 2 weeks after submitting a petition, we received our election date. Our ballots will be counted May 31st. Before we organized at our store, corporate did not care about the conditions at our store. We worked through our second rat infestation in a year because we weren't given enough labor from corporate to schedule enough people to keep up with the store's regular cleaning tasks. I would work doubles, miss breaks, and come home covered in rashes from working in the store's conditions. We had equipment and pipes breaking on the daily, which caused our drive times to suffer, which our district manager wants to be under 48 seconds, which is nearly impossible. We were without a store manager for a month, and we were told it could be up to 6 months without a store manager until we went on strike and were given a store manager within a day. Since going on strike, there's not a day that we do not have at least 2 to 3 district managers or other store managers monitoring the floor, and they've put up anti-union propaganda and messages to intimidate partners. Yeah, gross. But the support my store received during our strike from people like Councilmember Sawant's office, Socialist Alternative, and other partners in the area, I think was pretty mind-blowing for everyone in our store. We come from a pretty small conservative town, not really what you may think as a progressive union town, and yet every day since the strike, I've had customers coming in asking how they can stand in solidarity with us and other Starbucks workers. During the strike, we were able to turn people away from the drive-thru after telling them about the store's working conditions. People cared about how workers were being treated by big corporate billionaires. Through organizing my store, I've met other workers from Fifth and Pike and Eastlake who went on strike this last weekend as well. Verizon workers who won their union vote last week. The labor movement is spreading. Starbucks in Virginia just won their union election on Tuesday. The Roastery won their election on Thursday. Over 200 Starbucks stores in 31 states have filed for elections, not to mention 8,000 Amazon workers in New York who won their union vote. These movements are inspiring other workers to take action against monopolistic billionaires hoarding wealth and allowing workers to suffer at the hands of their profits. We are tired of being exploited. We are tired of being overworked and underpaid, and we will no longer allow big billionaires and capitalists like Howard Schultz and Kevin Johnson, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos to continue to silence and exploit workers hoarding wealth. We have to stand in solidarity as a united working class to show that we are willing to fight for what we deserve. We are the ones who show up every day. We need to escalate this fight to win what we deserve. We need coordinated nationwide walkouts to demand Starbucks stop union busting, to demand the reinstatement of the Memphis 7, Layla Dalton, and any other wrongfully terminated for organizing, and to show Howard Schultz that Spotify Premium doesn't pay my bills, but you know what does? $20 an hour.
Thank you, Katie and Lincoln. I mean, that just about said it all, you know, and I think these workers' brave actions and these strikes are pointing a way forward for a lot of Starbucks workers, like, a few have already talked about today, who are feeling, isolated or demoralized in the face of threats and intimidation by Starbucks executives. And they're looking for a way to fight back and bring more workers into the fight. Katie's store going from 0 to 70% of union cards signed in just 3 days over that strike. They had not really talked about the union or started signing cards, like she said. And by the time of the end of their strike, getting to 70%, in large part because they put forward strong demands and they had that front and center. They printed their own flyers that they were handing to customers as they were flagging them down and asking them to turn away from the drive-thru. It was inspiring to see them convincing fellow working people to strike. So that's an absolutely crucial example of what needs to happen to win more and more workers into this union. Yeah. So our next speakers are Hannah Whitbeck, a Starbucks worker from Michigan, and Lydia Claypool and Michael Vestigo, Starbucks workers from Kansas. Hannah and Lydia are the workers I mentioned earlier who were fired for exactly opposite reasons in a blatant anti-union move by Starbucks executives. And we're so glad to have all of you here to talk about what the fight back has looked like in your cities and to stand with you in demanding your immediate reinstatement. Welcome up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lydia Claypool, and I am from the 75th and I-35 store in Overland Park, Kansas. We wanted to share a little bit about how hypocritical the company has been with their union firings. So I was approaching my 5th year with the company. I was fired the day before my birthday for working in the store with an elevated temperature from a sunburn. I was fired for not leaving immediately, but if I would have broken Starbucks' policy by leaving my opening barista alone in our store. We are demanding for the reinstatement for all of us and everyone who's spoken today who's been wrongfully fired. And lastly, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. It means so much to us, and we're so happy to be here from Kansas.
Howdy, folks. My name is Hannah. I am from the store on Main and Liberty in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This month would have been my 3rd year with the company until I was fired on April 11th. I was fired for leaving a barista alone in the store without contacting management. When I did talk with the old interim store manager, Miss Erin Lind, and I told her that I did let the supervisor on duty know, I was told this is about you, not him, and to watch my tone. Even though I just lost my health care, my food, my money for food, money for rent, money for everything, and my ASU benefits that I just started. So I single-handedly organized my store in a matter of days. Thank you. It was very hard. And I was very vocal, I'm still very vocal, about organizing and my supports for unions. And like Lydia and Michael, who's about to be speaking, and lots of other partners here, I believe I was wrongfully terminated. I'm here to show the company, despite their best efforts, they will not sweep my wrongful termination under the rug. And I am demanding reinstatement for myself and all of my partners here. And solidarity.
Hello, my name is Michael Vestigo. Right now, you can call me Apollo. I was hired onto Starbucks on November 2nd, 2020, and I had been with the company for about a year and a half. Then, on April 1st, like a bad April Fool's Day joke, I was fired from the company for being supposedly violent and threatening. Tell me, does this look violent and threatening? Does it? No, absolutely not. I made the mistake during the PDC. When they asked me what some of my weaknesses were, I told them that I have a difficult time standing up for myself. So they targeted me. I believe they targeted me for this termination, and they turned around and called me violent and threatening, but kept me in the store for 3 weeks? I don't think so. You don't keep someone who's violent and threatening on the floor for 3 weeks. It doesn't make any sense. And the message I come bearing today is one of power. I want to let everybody know, all the small people out there, for Starbucks, for other workers, for other jobs, corporations, whatever, it does not matter how big or how small you are. As evidenced by the Roastery and Amazon, you can organize a large number of people to unionize against these corporations. I come from a store that is maybe had 16 people. We had 16 baristas, and we organized, and we went on strike after another coworker was accused of stealing $20,000 over the course of 8 months. So we organized and we went on strike. And even though we may be small, that day we filled up that parking lot with members of the community, with other labor unions, with the support from the community. So that is my message for everybody. Don't be afraid to unionize. You have the support. You have the power. Thank you so much.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This is an incredible, incredible, incredible crowd. Thank you so much, Hannah, Lydia, and Michael as well. Our next speaker is Marie O'Toole, a Starbucks worker from New York City. Marie has not only been organizing her store, but she has also been tabling with the Amazon Labor Union in the run-up to the crucial LDJ5 warehouse election next week. We're so grateful she was able to take a few days out to come here and help us build for this rally and share the lessons of the organizing that's been happening on the other side of the country. Welcome up, Marie.
All right. Thank you, so much. It's really exciting to have flown out here with so many other Starbucks workers. Oh, sorry. A little too loud? Okay. It's so exciting to have flown out here with so many other Starbucks workers from all around the country who, like myself and so many of our coworkers, are fighting to have a union in our stores. And also to be here with so many working people from all over who are in solidarity with us against Starbucks' vicious and shameful union busting campaign. It's particularly exciting to be here in Seattle, where recently 3 stores went on strike to fight against the company's anti-worker attacks, such as cuts to hours and staffing shortages, attacks on the livelihoods of the very people whose backs this company was built on. Starbucks' billionaire CEO Howard Schultz, in a video leaked just 2 days ago, put organizing workers on blast and made it clear that the gloves are coming off with the union busting campaign. That Schultz and the company's other executives see the union as a threat to the company that needs to be stopped, meaning that he sees us, the Starbucks workers, as a threat that needs to be stopped. In reality, what Howard Schultz and Ross Ann Williams and every executive wanted to make clear is what working people around the world inherently know, that there are 2 sides to this fight. On one side, represented by billions of dollars and the biggest union-busting firm in history, you have the Starbucks bosses. On the other side, you have the Starbucks workers who fight for the things that we need. Things like a $20 starting wage tied to inflation, healthcare from day one that includes guaranteed hours, fully staffed stores, and an end to the retaliatory firings and the immediate reinstatement of all workers who have been fired for organizing. Howard Schultz called the union an outside force, but I don't see an outside force here. What I see are the workers who have made Starbucks and its executives billions of dollars and now have to struggle for even the most basic things like a living wage. Who have to worry about what the next schedule looks like for us. Is it going to be enough to pay my rent? Is it going to be enough to maintain my benefits? And who have to defend ourselves against union busting attacks like the retaliatory firings that we saw. The way for us to combat Howard's plans to bust up this union and for us to win what we are going to need is going to have to be for all of us coming together and following the courageous examples of the workers at the 3 stores here in Seattle, the workers in Marysville and Olympia, in Kansas City, in Ithaca and Buffalo, in Denver, and at all other stores who have taken the time-honored path of withholding their labor for their demands. But what we have is even bigger than one or two courageous stores going on strike. What we have is a nationwide movement that has workers with shared interests in over 9,000 stores, and we will be stronger when we can see and feel that nationally like we do here today. We need to be working to win over every unorganized store in this country to join our fight, and we need to be taking the offensive through coordinated nationwide days of action that include coordinated work stoppages and strikes with our demands front and center. We need a national day of action with rallies just like this one in cities all across the country, organized around concrete demands like the ones being put forward by Seattle Starbucks workers. I look forward to fighting with you every step of the way to win a union in all of our stores and a strong contract that will improve my and all Starbucks baristas' lives. Solidarity.
So before we have our final speaker before the march, which we'll give a little more details about in a moment, I would like to ask all of the Starbucks workers who are here today to come up to the front and stand here in front of this banner. Yeah, give it up for all the Starbucks workers today. That's right. And one note is that you're going to see a lot of folks with clipboards, with a petition that stands against Starbucks union busting. If you have not signed it, even if you have signed it, sign it today. And look for folks with a clipboard. Just wanted to mention that. All right. So our final speaker, I would like to introduce Councilmember Sawant. She's a member of Socialist Alternative and DSA and a rank and file member of AFT Local 1789. Councilmember Sawant is a working class representative and has fought unwaveringly alongside working people in our movements during her 8 years in office. In January of this year, she introduced the first resolution in the country in solidarity with unionizing Starbucks workers and against union busting by Starbucks executives here in Seattle, where Starbucks is headquartered. And she fought successfully to pass that resolution on the Seattle City Council. Similar resolutions have since been introduced by socialist council members in Chicago and Minneapolis. She has rallied, marched, and walked picket lines with Starbucks workers in the months since and donated $5,000 from her Solidarity Fund to the Pacific Northwest Starbucks Worker Strike Fund. Thank you and welcome, Councilmember Sawant.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to start with a note of condolences to the loved ones of Scott Morrow. Those of you who are from the Seattle area will know that Scott Morrow was a tireless fighter for our homeless neighbors, for those fighting for social housing and fighting for social justice. Scott Morrow was part of our fight for the $15 minimum wage in 2014 as well. Scott unfortunately passed away after having battled a long illness, and so we send our best wishes to his partner, Peggy Holtz, all the residents and everybody else who has fought alongside Nicholsville, all our homeless neighbors and all the union members, socialists and working people who are fighting for an affordable Seattle. On May 2nd, this coming week, my office will bring forward a proclamation to honor Scott Morrow's legacy and to send a message across the city that we need to keep the fight on. The unionization drives at Amazon and Starbucks are a major turning point in the U.S. labor movement. The historic victory at Amazon JFK 8 in New York is one of the largest in decades. The nearly 30 stores at Starbucks that have voted for a union and nearly 240 that have announced organizing committees has been happening at an astonishing pace. The Capitol Hill Roastery, one of the flagship stores of Starbucks, just had their successful union vote this week. This roastery election vote is extra sweet for us because it has taken place in the backyard of billionaire Howard Schultz, who lives in District 3. History shows that class struggle is contagious. Both these union drives are empowering workers all over the country. This is also why bosses will fight tooth and nail against any and every new union, against any and every first contract, and it would be a mistake for us to assume anything different. The corporate executives at Starbucks and everywhere know full well that unions stand in the way of exploiting their workers and maximizing their profits on our backs. They fear the example of each union vote. To rebuild a fighting labor movement in the US, we have to overcome not only the billionaires, but unfortunately also the counterweight of several decades of failed strategies by many cautious labor leaders. We need to learn the lessons of both past victories and past defeats. And it will not be easy to talk about this, but we have to. One lesson is the power of the strike, which coffee workers are beginning to exercise. The strike is the sharpest tool workers have to fight for their collective interests. It represents, as Marie said, the power to withdraw your labor and withhold the boss's profits. Most of the major gains of the labor movement were won through the effective use of the strike tactic. The successes of industrial unionism in the 1930s and 40s, including the launch of the Congress of Industrial Organizations, or CIO, was won on the shoulders of the three strikes that led the way in Minneapolis, Toledo, and San Francisco in 1934, all led by socialists, and the historic General Motors sit-down strikes in 1936 and 37. Strikes have been at a low for decades in parallel with the long decline of the labor movement. This is not an accident, but it was directly connected to the rise of what I would call business unionism. In short, business unionism is the idea that workers should quietly let labor leaders, by themselves negotiate contracts with the bosses in some rooms, which are often filled with defeats for workers, rather than workers actively organizing ourselves. The problem is that the bosses will never concede unless they are forced to, because their profits are directly derived from underpaying us workers. So one of the hallmarks of business unionism has been preventing strikes at all costs. Business unionists, unfortunately, put their stress on the so-called bargaining process, and they fear antagonizing management by any real mobilization of the rank and file, much less that rank and file going on strike. This bankrupt approach has led to the lowest levels of unionization in over a century, with the private sector at only 6% union. If we are to build on what we know is dramatic and historic potential in the proud American working class, then we are going to need a clean break with the failed ideas of business unionism. What we need instead is a class struggle approach, the kind of militant fighting ideas that our American labor movement was built on. A class struggle approach is rooted in rank and file organizing around clear and concrete demands. It is based on the recognition that under capitalism, the interests of the bosses are in fundamental conflict with the interests of workers. This is just a fact. We didn't make it, so it is so. Rather than the idea of being able to morally persuade the bosses, which will never happen, as many labor bureaucrats would have it, class struggle unionism recognizes that worker power does not reside in the bargaining room, but outside it, in the workplaces and on the streets. Worker power needs to be consolidated by building both the unionization struggle and the contract struggle around the concrete needs of our fellow workers. As Katie said from Marysville, you know what will help us? A $20 an hour starting wage. And explaining to our fellow workers why the first step to win any of these demands that is going to improve your life is to win the union. Unfortunately, the leadership of many unions have been very resistant to organizing around clear demands, and we need to change that, and we know we can do it. Workers are already doing it. A class struggle approach is rooted in engaging and mobilizing the widest possible layer of workers. It starts in the workplace, on the shop floor, in the break rooms, at shift change times, during lunch breaks, whenever and wherever workers can discuss. A class struggle approach also understands that we have to extend to involve workers beyond our specific workplaces and companies. Because when workers in one industry can win gains, it helps all of us to win the same. To succeed, it is vital to organize around strong demands. It is particularly crucial in a strike or unionizing effort when workers are under fire from their bosses. We need to make it crystal clear what we are fighting for, what the union is about, and what the strike is about. Because when the bosses, the store managers, come and tell your co-workers, the union is not in your interest, they only want your dues, how are we going to counter that? We have to counter that by telling our co-workers why joining a union and then fighting inside that union is imperative to winning any kind of positive change. All these lessons have been employed in the successful fight in New York by the Amazon Labor Union. They put their concrete demands front and center throughout. They literally had leaflets with $30 an hour stamped right in front in big bold letters. They built a rank and file driven union genuinely led by workers giving up hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month, sitting in the break rooms during their off-shift hours and talking to on-shift workers. They made it clear from the beginning that Amazon would ferociously fight against the union drive. They did not raise expectations that somehow Jeff Bezos or other executives want to be partners with them. They prepared workers for a vicious union busting campaign, which is exactly what they faced and which is exactly what they defeated. The working class and the billionaires are fundamentally at odds under the bankrupt system of capitalism. That is why I am a socialist. But we have the real power when we get organized to use it with our eyes open. It is important that on May 1st, Starbucks Workers United is organizing a national day of action. I do think it's unfortunate that it has not been widely publicized or systematically built for, and I think that those of us here, we need to do what we can to make that day successful and then to call for further nationwide coordinated days of action where we can have rallies, protest marches, and walkouts and strike actions by Starbucks workers, with the rest of us out here supporting them. So right now, in that spirit, we are going to begin a march to make sure all workers around the city know about the Starbucks Union Drive and why it is in their interest to support us. I hope you'll join us at the march, and then after the march ends, we will rally again, very quick rally, but you are going to hear from important speakers, including 2 rank and file members from the local teachers union who fought for a resolution in solidarity with Starbucks workers in their union, and they won it. So I hope you'll stick around. Bia will explain instructions for the march, solidarity.
Okay, so we're gonna have Shama and all these Starbucks workers lead the march. If I could get all the stewards to come to the front. These are folks in the orange vests. Please look out for those. We're gonna have a peaceful march. The stewards are gonna help direct us. Yeah, look for your friendly stewards. All right, what do